Well, let's see what's ahead of the riders on stage one. They're getting themselves set. They're on the start line waiting and ready. It's a short stage, but let's take a little closer look.
Setting off from Dalby Forest in the heart of the North York Moors National Park, stage one is short at just 81.5 kilometres, but it does include over 1,000 metres of ascent. The first categorised climb comes at Blakey Ridge and is quickly followed by the second at Langburn's Bank. From there, the peloton heads towards the Tees Valley with an intermediate sprint at Newton-under-Rosebery before hitting the coast for the final few kilometres. The finish line is in Redcar, which makes its debut in the women's race 9 months on from hosting a stage in the men's tour that set Stevie Williams on his way to overall victory.
Wow, brilliant to see that the skies are looking a little brighter than they were earlier on. You can see the riders are set and ready. On the front row, you've got the Polish road race champion, that's Wladysek of UAE team ADQ. Got one former winner in the overall classification who's here, and that is Lizzie Dignam, Britain's very own. Got our neutralised rollout currently on the far side there. You can see Eleanor Backstead, the British rider coming from South Wales. We've got 12 UCI Women's World Tour teams who are racing here, including one pro team, that's EF Education only, 5 continental teams, all British continental teams are here, and you can see one of those on the left side in the red and black jerseys. That's Jo Tinley, one of the most experienced riders in this peloton. We've also got the British national team. They're fielding the federation, which is led by Jess Roberts, former British road race champion. Caroline Schwinkels, you can see they're just talking into the radio, it's all smiles. We've got this neutralised rollout before the race will get underway for real. At the back here, you've got Milena de Zota of Sarah Tizet Pro Cycling. Well, it's going to be a very interesting stage, 81 kilometres of racing. It's pretty hilly, you know, for this type of terrain, 1,173 metres of elevation. Flag is going to be waved and they're going to go through kilometre zero, and racing will officially be underway. Don't forget, you've got those 2 Queen of the Mountain points through kilometre zero. UAE team ADQ there, the squad on the front, you can see they've gone through kilometre zero and rejoin. And look how ferocious the racing already is. In the pink jerseys on the left side, that's EF Education only. You've also got Little Trek with Rhiannon Marcus. Just alongside them, you've also got Movistar, who of course wanted to try and protect Kat Ferguson today. And on the far right-hand side of your screen, in those indigo and orange jerseys, that's Picnic Post NL. And of course, looking after the interests of Charlotte Cole today. Well, thanks for joining for this Lloyds Tour of Britain Women. My name's Hannah Walker. Alongside me is Hayley Simmons, a Commonwealth bronze medalist, multiple British champion, and a rider who has raced in this race during her career. Hayley, good afternoon, welcome along. This is typical British weather in some typical fashion.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very British week actually here. The weather looks like it's going to be quite challenging across all 4 of the stages, and as we both know, the roads in this part of the country in particular are pretty harsh. They can be very draining on the legs, so I think the women here have tough 4 days of racing ahead of them.
We certainly do, and particularly the fact that we start with a relatively short stage. When you take a look down at the stages, they've got 81.7 kilometres of racing, 114.6, 143.8 kilometres on Saturday, finishing in Glasgow with an 82.2 kilometre stage. It makes for aggressive racing too, and so because you've of course got the bonus seconds that are on offer at the intermediate sprints and at the finish line, you've got the Queen of the Mountains, the fact that the roads are difficult and positioning is really crucial. It lends itself to this kind of, and this type of nature of racing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we've said today's short, it's only just over 80 kilometres, but actually in terms of elevation metres per kilometre, today's the toughest stage. So I think today's going to be a really tough introduction to the race. And as you said, the nature of the roads in the UK, some of the road furniture we have, obviously, you know, we're in quite a rural area as well. Riders will want to get up the road, get kind of be safe, be away from the main peloton, and really race aggressively to give themselves the best chance here.
And we saw a lot of the riders at the start in Dalby Forest who were on the turbo trainers wanting to warm up. We saw Barbara Gurishki, one of the most experienced riders in the peloton, and particularly as a lead-out rider, the Italian for Team SD Works Pro Time was making sure that she was ready, prepared, getting any travel out of the legs too.
Yeah, and as well, I think if you look at the profile, actually the neutralised section went up a bit of a drag, and then they dropped down a little bit, and then the race was deneutralised also on another drag. So, you know, it really was necessary, especially with slightly lower temperatures today than the riders might have kind of gotten used to over the last weeks and months. It really was necessary to make sure you were well warmed up. And even though they then dropped down towards kilometre 15 and 20, they then got almost 20 kilometres of ascent, which features the first categorised climb. So it could really make for, you know, an aggressive opening to the stage, and the race could split early on.
How does that affect a rider when the weather conditions are a little bit cooler than they have been perhaps over the last couple of weeks, wherever they've been racing around Europe or elsewhere, and then you've got these different weather conditions? Does it affect them at all, or it depends on the person, the rider? Some
riders will love this. I think Pat Ferguson will love this. You know, she's raced really well in some really bad conditions over the last kind of 12 months. Lizzie Deignan will love this. You know, we know that she likes the kind of we know that she loves the Tour of Britain women. She loves the bad weather. She loves the harder roads. So I think she'll be quite pleased that the weather's not so good today. Whereas maybe some of the other girls coming from some of the Spanish races might have kind of looked at the weather forecast and wished they'd stayed on the continent.
Well, that being said, even the Vuelta a España Femenina, they didn't have such great weather conditions, whereas we had glorious weather, 28 degrees, didn't we, a few weeks ago at the back end of April. Watch out for Imogen Wolf of Visma Lease Bike too. She'll be a rider to watch out for, the 19-year-old rider. They've of course come with a very strong team, particularly with Martina Fidanza, their sprinter. They've also got the German rider Linda Riedman, Margot Vigi, and Jenke Veenhoven, the 21-year-old Dutch rider. Just at the back here is Sonara Grove, the South African national road race champion. You can just see her there on the far right-hand side, racing for CJ O'Shea Racing. A team that you know well from a couple of years ago, a team that you raced for, Hayley. And we've got all 5 British continental teams who are here. You can see a couple of them at the back here, including Hess in the lime green and black jerseys. That's Hess cycling team, and you're looking there at Liv Wenzel, 21-year-old who's just reaching into a back pocket. You've also got the team of Hansling Alba Development Road team. You've also got Dat Hutchinson. Both of those teams having a win recently over in the Czech Republic. Brilliant for them, but also for Lauren Dixon. She's performing incredibly well in France as well at some of the one-day races over in Brittany. So they've got plenty of options, and it's great to see that we've got all 5 of the British teams.
Yeah, it's really nice that in you know, the only World Tour race in the UK that all of the British teams are represented, and also obviously Great Britain national team are here as well. So it's a great opportunity for you know, some of our continental teams to race against the top World Tour teams. And like you said, you know, some of these teams and some of these girls have already had some great results over the past weeks, and you know, they've been racing in the Tour of Norway, Tour de Feminine in the Czech Republic, and have been really performing very well. So it'll be really nice to see what they can do in this race this week.
How important is it to have those stage races already in the legs? Because when you take a look at the Tour de Feminine in Czech Republic, that's 4 stages. You've got the Tour of Norway, the first edition of that, a couple of days stage races, which had some brilliant racing there.
Yeah, so you know, you need to kind of get that fatigue resistance. You need to be used to racing a hard stage one day, and then you know, taking what recovery you can, because for some of these races as well, there can be longer transfers. You might have limited time to cool down at the end of the stage. So it's all about kind of learning what kind of tips and tricks you can employ to make sure that you're as best recovered for the next day as possible. One thing that I always used to do in a stage race, which can be difficult if the stages start early, but I would always try and make sure that I would do a 20-minute spin the morning of each stage, just to make sure that the racing from the night before was out of my legs. And also, you know, you're very lucky that you'll have soigneurs traveling with you. You can have a massage each evening, but sometimes actually that massage can, you know, leave you feeling almost a little bit stale. So I would always find it quite useful the next morning to just spin my legs for 20 minutes first thing in the morning before even getting to the stage to warm up, and that was one thing that I used to do on a stage race.
Brilliant that we can bring live coverage of the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women to viewers and fans all around the world. Just to let you know, this is all coming off 5G coverage, so there will be in parts potentially a little bit of picture breakup, but we've got these wonderful helicopter shots, and you can start to see now as riders are heading into the base of the first Queen of the Mountain of the day. That's a Category 2 on Blakey Ridge. This climb itself is 6.4 kilometres long, an average gradient of 3.9%. You can see how fast the speeds are here, Hayley, as we travel into the base of that 1 kilometre until we get to the base of the climb itself.
Yeah, I think the wind direction could play quite a big part on this stage today. So at the moment they're in a section of the course where it's going to be mostly across tailwind. So actually, you know, they will get some assistance up this slightly shallower climb. But later on in the stage, they're going to be facing more crosswind sections. And actually, we could really see that have an effect on the peloton. And maybe we'll get some splitting and into smaller groups towards the finish.
Given that the climb is one of the longest of today, because the next climb that they'll have is Langburn's Bank, and that's 1.9 kilometres, but much more severe, steeper gradients, average of 6.6%. We've got maximum gradients here of 8% on this climb, but as you say, it's a little bit more steady, it's longer. I guess this is going to suit a rider like Kristen Faulkner, for example, the Olympic road race champion of EF Education Oatly.
Yeah, it was interesting listening to her talk in that kind of pre-race interview, because I was actually thinking that as a whole this race could suit her quite well. You know, the roads are draggy, they're tough, it's really attritional, and she said that she actually likes the kind of accumulation of this fatigue in the legs. So those kind of slightly shallower but longer climbs could actually be a real a place where we could see riders like her maybe trying to get a bit of an advantage, forming a smaller group off the front and kind of taking a bit of a chance.
And I guess for her team of EF Education Oatly, they don't come necessarily with a pure sprinter. They've got some fast riders. They've got Sarah Roy, who's won 2 stages of this race in the past. They've also got Letizia Borghese, who's been having a brilliant spring season. And for Faulkner herself, suffering with that concussion early on in the season, she missed a large chunk of racing. But now, having won the USA Road Race Nationals last week, she comes into this race with great form.
Yeah, and you know, I think that as a team they have quite a lot of like opportunists.
Yeah.
They've got riders who, as you heard, have performed really well in this race before, and almost they can be a little bit unpredictable, some of their riders, which is great for kind of entertainment for us watching them race. I think they'll take any advantage they can get, and they will be aggressive. They won't just sit in and you know, wait to see what happens. They'll really take the race upon themselves and make it interesting. And
given the fact that Lorena Wiebes is here, a rider who has won 6 stages, the most of any rider in history. She's the rider who's got number 1 on about the European road race champion of Team SD Works Pro Time, and she stated before coming here she wants to try and go for the general classification. She wants to try and give it a go, and the team are fully backing her, and she's got a brilliant team to support her in doing so. And we've seen already that despite being the best sprinter in the world, she can climb, and she can never be underestimated.
No, you really can't count her out, and you know, you look on paper and you would say that there's more than one stage in this race that suits her, but actually I think she can perform well on actually all of the stages. You know, she's so strong, she's so versatile. It reminds me a little bit of, you know, actually a previous winner of this race, Corinne Ledecky. She was Corinne Rivera. You know, initially people would look at her and call her a sprinter, but then actually you see some of the other results she had, and she's so much more versatile than that. And I think it's almost similar with Lorena Wiebes. You know, people initially would say, oh, the fastest sprinter in the world, but she's so much more than a sprinter, and she has a real shot of winning the overall here.
Yeah, she certainly does. She certainly does, and she's proven it in the Spring Classic. She's proven it time and time again, and even proven in this race in the past, back in 2022 when we were in Mid-Wales, some really hard grippy roads, and she proved that she was more than just a sprinter. You can see how the team of AG Insurance Soudal have got things all under control. They're the team in the blue and white jerseys, just patrolling on the front currently. They've also got Lidl Trek, who are just alongside them. There's Eleanor Backstead, the rider for UAE Team ADQ, who is setting the tempo. She's really becoming one of the great workhorses of her team. The amount of kilometres she does on the front.
I was going to say, I remember watching, this race, and also, so many other races last year, obviously for a different team. She was riding for Lidl Trek at the time, but she's just a constant sight on the front, just doing so much of the work. She's such an asset to the team.
She certainly is. She certainly is. Rihanna Marquez setting the tempo for Lidl Trek. Loretta Hansen just on a wheel. It's no easy feat, this climb, I've got to say. It's a categorised 2 climb. There are, of course, points for the Queen of the Mountains competition: 6, 5, 4, 3, 2 and 1 points. Both climbs that we'll see feature in today's stage, both category 2 climbs, but very different, varied climbs. Even from the body language of these riders, and you see the pedalling style, this is not an easy start to the base of this climb.
No, you can tell that they're working, and riders are trying to move up towards the front, kind of through the up the outside of the bunch, and desperately trying to get themselves in the best position possible, so that if somebody starts pushing on even harder, they can respond and make sure that they're not gapped at the back of the bunch. You can see how exposed it is as well. I mean, they're lucky that it is kind of cross-tail today, but I think if this was a pure crosswind, it would be quite brutal across the top of this climb.
Tamsin Miller on the right-hand side, number 152 for Das Hutchinson. Just to the left-hand side of Smurfit West Rock cycling team, that's Joe Tinley, number 176. You mentioned about the wind and the fact that it's exposed and you've got this cross-tail wind. How does that change your race? How does that benefit or hamper the riders?
So I think the directors of the teams will have sat down this morning, looked at the most up-to-date weather forecast. They'll look at the profile and also obviously the direction of the different roads on the course. And what really struck me looking at some of that myself was the second categorised climb of the day, which is a Cat 2 climb, and it's 1.9 kilometres, but it's steep at the bottom for the first kind of 350 metres, and then the average for the whole climb is 6.6%. Basically, right after they summit that climb, the course changes direction by 90 degrees, and it goes from being a cross tailwind into a cross headwind. So if there are any gaps forming on that climb, which there almost certainly will be as people go for the points at the top of the climb, actually if riders decided to push on at that point, those splits could just grow, and actually what could happen is the race could fracture at that point. And with it being quite a short stage, that's not that far from the finish, and so actually that could really be the decisive moment of this race. And I think directors will have looked at that. They will have looked at the weather, they will have looked at the map, and they will have identified that point in the race as a potential kind of attacking point or place from which an attack could be launched.
And depending on how the race unfolds today, and particularly depending on how the second half of this categorised climb goes, and particularly on the Langburn's bank, you can try and do something, you can try and split things, and if you want to try and get rid of some of the faster riders, namely Lorena Wiebes, Lara Gillespie, Ali Wollaston, for example, teams will be willing to try and push on that pace and have that aggressive style of racing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that, obviously it goes with the fact that she's the best sprinter in the world, but Lorena is so good at positioning. Like, she will absolutely be in the right position. She'll know the danger points, and she'll make sure that she's where she needs to be to kind of keep herself safe. She also has a very strong team around her. But I think that's one thing that actually makes her very well suited to some of these stages in Britain. What's made her so successful in this race in the past is the nature of the roads, as we've already spoken about, that they are narrow, there is road furniture, and positioning is so key, and that's something that she's just brilliant at and really puts her in good stead.
One thing that is apparent to me, we haven't seen the team towards the front at all. They've been well positioned. They've been using the slipstream. They've been protecting themselves and sheltering themselves from the wind. You can just see Lorena Wiebes just alongside the Mauritian champion in the bottom left of your screen, that European champions jersey, the white jersey with the blue bands across the chest, number 1. That's who you're watching out for, Lorena Wiebes. Multiple-time European champion, also world champion on the track. Little opportunity to take a look at the Great Britain national team as well. Number 182 there, that's Anna Morris. Just in front of her is April Tacey, 24-year-old. Another fantastic rider, and another rider who's got plenty of opportunities. We've also got Jess Roberts, Anna Morris, Flora Perkins, Millie Cousins, Ella McLean-Howell and April Tacey. Jess Roberts is her first UCI race of this season. Of course, she's been a former British road race champion, Olympic medalist last year in Paris.
I think what we'll see is the points in the race where, you know, it's maybe been identified that they're more danger points, so to speak. Maybe on that second categorised climb, you know, we'll start to kind of see Lorena Wiebes, maybe some of the other riders from the SD Works Pro Time team. That's when they'll move towards the front and they'll move as a team. And when you're kind of in the peloton yourself, you almost watch for those moments where the race favourites, the big teams, all start moving towards the front, and that's kind of your signal that you need to be really alert, because something might be about to happen that you might need to pay attention to.
You certainly do. 2 kilometres until they'll crest the top of Blakely Ridge.
I'm almost surprised that maybe a few riders from some of the British teams, from the continental teams, haven't maybe tried to get away yet, and possibly that indicates that how tough these roads actually are, that nothing has tried to escape, because, you know, obviously there is the honour of having the Queen of the Mountains jersey on your back at the end of today's stage, and with those 2 climbs being relatively close together, you know, there would have been an opportunity for a small group or an individual rider to kind of go off the front and maybe take those early Queen of the Mountains points to have that jersey on their back tomorrow.
But I guess we also saw at the start of the stage how fast the pace was, and particularly into the bottom of this Queen of the Mountain, that particularly the UCI Women's World Tour teams, they were wanting to keep themselves well positioned, make sure that they could have the prime position, and so the pace naturally is very high, and it almost neutralises any potential attacks. And for some of these British continental teams, and you mentioned it at the start, these roads are so difficult, they're so demanding. You know, maybe they've got objectives of a little bit later on, or maybe on other stages.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're right. I think it does just show how hard the start of this stage has been, you know, with all those kind of uphill meters and a fast pace. And I think, yeah, I think you're right. I think maybe people would have liked to have given it a go, and there's just not been that opportunity because of how hard it's been.
Already the rider there from Hess Cycling Team in the lime green and black jersey, that's Liv Wenzel, the 21-year-old, just starting to struggle, and the average pace has already been really high, already 37 kilometres per hour. Rihanna Marker's still setting the tempo. She's got such a fluid style, the rider on the left-hand side of your screen in the red, yellow and blue jersey. Anna Henderson sitting nicely. She's certainly one rider to watch out for, the Olympic medalist in the time trial from Paris 2024.
And of course second last year in this race as well.
She's certainly a rider who's not afraid of getting stuck in, and the harder the racing, the better it is for Anna Henderson.
Yeah, you know, she's got a medal in the time trial in the Olympics. You know, you can tell that anything that's kind of just hard and unrelenting is going to suit her well, and we've seen her, you know, in solo breaks in enough races. She's really aggressive, but she also reads the race really well, so she always chooses really good moments to attack. So she's a rider that's definitely worth watching this week. Over
the North York Moors, there is Rihanna Marker's just taking a sip of fluids, and even though the weather conditions are a little bit cooler, 15 degrees, you can start to see that the sun is making an appearance, so still really important to keep yourself well hydrated, well fueled, particularly in a stage race. There we get to 500 metres until we'll get to the top of this Queen of the Mountain here on Blakey Ridge.
I think we'll probably start to see maybe a little bit of a change of pace here, a little bit of attacking as people do try and go for these points now.
Don't forget, points available for the first 6 riders across the line, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2 and 1 points towards that Queen of the Mountains competition. And of course, it's a very important competition if you are to be in this kind of tour with a jersey, a leader's jersey on your shoulders. It's brilliant for the team, it's brilliant for you as a rider, but of course really important for your sponsors and partners of your team. So now you start to see a little increase in pace. X Mobility with Anuska Costa just down the centre of the white line, and now we start to see the move go. Anuska Costa in the black jersey. It's Dominik Vladyshuk, the Polish champion of UAE Team ADQ, who's going for those points close on the line, but it looks as though that Anuska Costa took the points there, took the 6. And as you said earlier on, Hayley, you have to be really attentive, because if a move goes over the top of these Queen of the Mountains, and particularly the fact that the pace has been so high, they're wanting to continue this pace here. Let's take a little look at this replay. Well, it is the Polish champion on the left-hand side in the white jersey who's going shoulder to shoulder with Anuska Costa. Anuska Costa comes through in that black jersey to take those 6 points. But there you see, so hotly contested.
If she didn't have a flapping gilet, she might have got that.
Got to save energy, save watts, and the drag and the aerodynamics.
It's the time trialist in me coming out there, isn't it? Sorry. Yeah, you can see these riders at the back just really fighting just to keep contact over the top here. You know, the accelerations towards the Queen of the Mountains, towards where those points are, you know it's going to be a danger point, and if you're already struggling just because of the fatigue of the climb, it's just a battle to stay in the wheels here and just keep yourself safe until the pace kind of drops a little bit again. Hoping it does.
Well, it's the former world champion who is driving things at the front. This is Lizzie Deignan of Lidl Trek with her teammate Anna Henderson. She comes through, does a turn, hands over to Anuska Costa, who took the 6 points in that Queen of the Mountain on Blakey Ridge, just coming through here from Liv Alula Jaco. That's Amber Pate. 51.1 kilometres of racing to go. A little opportunity for riders to try and come back on. You can see there's around 10 riders who are distanced off the back and more further behind. But this just shows, despite the little bit of respite that they do have here, Hayley, slightly downhill, just how difficult it is once you start to be ejected from the back of a peloton, how hard it is to come back.
Yeah, and actually the difficulty here is that there are little bits of descent after that kind of Queen of the Mountains point, but actually the roads keep climbing for another kind of probably 5 or 6 kilometres before it then really drops down. So, you know, the riders who are already struggling, they don't just suddenly get a bit of a rest and get to kind of, you know, freewheel down a descent. They've got to kind of keep pushing, because there are false flats and more ascent, and it's not until kind of maybe kilometre kind of 37, 38 that they'll then properly drop down. And when they do drop down, at the bottom of that descent, they're then straight into the next climb.
I don't know about you, but this is giving Spring Classics vibes. The fact that the roads that we've got here, the fact that it's open, it's exposed, we've got the wind, that really plays a big part to this race and the way that they're racing. And you've got to learn how to ride in the wind as well, to learn where you need to be. If the wind is coming from the left-hand side, where do you want to try and protect yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's, you know, you also almost have to learn how to ride in the UK sometimes. I think it's what makes Lizzie Deignan love this race so much, because the roads are so kind of slow rolling compared to a lot of other places in Europe. But I always think it's really interesting kind of coming back to the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women in June, because you know, we've obviously had the kind of the Dutch and the Belgian races in February, March, into kind of the start of April. But then the racing moves more to France, to Spain, where the nature of the roads are so different, and kind of the riders almost get more used to that kind of terrain and those difficulties and the differences, you know, racing on kind of the wider, smoother Spanish roads, maybe with the longer climbs. And then suddenly they're thrown back into the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women, where the racing is kind of much more back towards Belgium and Holland, and kind of it's almost a bit of a shock to the system.
Certainly is. A little bit of calm is reignited at the front, but still there's a large number of riders who are fighting their way back through the convoy. We pass through the North York Moors National Park, right up in the northeastern part of Yorkshire in England. Contains one of the largest expanses of heather moorland in the whole of the United Kingdom, actually designated as a national park back in 1952. Real stunning part of the country here. Attracts an estimated 8.4 million visitors a year.
There's some great shots over the moors.
Stunning,
here.
isn't it?
It's brilliant.
It is stunning, and it is a wonderful place to come and ride your bike. It's very quiet. You've got the beautiful scenery, hard roads, but rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. I think actually training in that part of the country is, well, it's a really beneficial place to train because it is hard riding.
There we get confirmation. Anuska Costa takes the 6 points for Uno X Mobility. Dominika Volodashek taking the 5 for UAE Team ADQ. Margot Vigy picking up the 4 points there. Quincy Ton taking the 3 for Livalula Jaco, and Alice Towers, the British rider, former British road race champion, taking the 2 points. It was so close for the one remaining point that it's a photo finish. We'll bring you the news as to who took that 1 point very shortly. But it shows how hotly contested those points are for the Queen in the Mountains, Hayley.
Absolutely. You know, this competition will actually be decided on Saturday. So the third stage is the final stage where we have categorised climbs. We've got a couple of Category 1 climbs on tomorrow's stage, and then actually the third stage in Kelso is the one where there's a lot of points on offer. There's quite a few different climbs on that stage for the riders to kind of be aware of and be vigilant of.
Opportunity for riders to take on some gels, take on some nutrition, some fuel. It's been such a fast start already, and I think when you take a look, Hayley, as we see a number of riders who are chasing back on, including one rider from Ceratizit Pro Cycling in the red and blue jersey. That looks like it's Milena de Zutter, their sprinter. You've also got a couple of riders there from Das Hutchinson. So one rider from Smurfit, West Rock, another couple of riders in the convoy trying to come back, including one of the riders from Canyon SRAM, Zonda Crypto. There's some big names who've been distanced here.
Just really shows you how tough that opening part of the stage was, and that climb as well. You know, it was a long climb. We say it only averaged 3.9%, but 6.6 kilometres, and the pace was high, so it's going to have been difficult for these riders. So now they're going to be kind of working their way up through the convoy, moving from car to car, and then hopefully managing to jump back onto the back of this peloton whilst the pace has actually dropped a little bit.
That also takes skill, to come through a convoy, to be patient, not panic.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's something that actually, you know, some of these teams, and particularly maybe the less experienced riders on some of the smaller continental teams, they'll almost practice this a little bit. You know, the drivers in the convoy are normally very experienced, and they're very aware when they have riders on their bumper, and they, you know, they do try and make it as easy as possible for those riders. But you know, the riders have to be concentrating on the road ahead, maybe what the other cars in the convoy ahead are doing, so that they know when the cars are maybe going to accelerate or decelerate. And you know, you're trying to keep yourself using as least energy as possible, sitting on those car bumpers, and then choosing the exact right moment to move from the car that you're currently on to the car in front, and working your way back up to the peloton with using as little energy as possible.
And there's some riders who they make it look so easy, so simple. Go from car to car. You can see one of the riders just on the bumper of the AG Insurance Soudal team. Take a breather, take a moment, get to SD Works Pro Time, get to that car. You can see also we've got our neutral service, Shimano neutral service, the blue cars with the spare bikes on the roof. And of course all teams have got their own spare bikes for each individual rider, but should it occur that maybe a team can't service their rider, maybe they're at the back of the peloton, maybe there's a breakaway, the Shimano neutral service can service those in the breakaway should they need a spare bike, need a wheel change, have a mechanical problem. We've also got our race director, the Commissaire's car and the white car. Despite the fact, I was just going to say, Hayley, despite the fact that we've actually gone over the top of this Queen of the Mountain, we're still climbing.
Yeah, we are still climbing. You can just see the roads and, you know, moving gradually upwards. And that's what it was making it so hard for these riders who'd been distanced on that QOM, because they didn't just have the kind of recovery straight away. They've got to keep pushing, got to keep going. And, you know, that's why riders pay such close attention to the route maps and the profiles within the tech manuals, because actually sometimes you'll get climbs on stages that are uncategorized that are harder than some of the categorized climbs, or at least feel harder to ride. So, you know, you really need to kind of go through it with a fine-tooth comb, so to speak, and make sure you know exactly what's coming up, because you can't just say, oh well, there's a category 2 climb there and that's where I think the aggression's going to be, because actually there might be a really short steep climb just before that cat 2 climb, and actually that's where the brake's going to go. So, you know, if you're a rider who's got real stage or overall race ambitions, you have to put in so much extra work to really know the race.
We've ticked over 1 hour of racing, 45.9 kilometres of racing to go. If you're just joining us, welcome along. It's the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women. Myself, Hannah Walker, alongside Hayley Simmons. We've got a stage of 81 kilometres today, taking the riders from Dalby Forest. She's one of England's largest mountain bike trail centres. They're heading for Redcar for our finish. Predicted to be a bunch sprint. However, we've got another categorised climb over Langburn's bank, a 1.9 kilometre climb, very steep, and it could be incredibly decisive. We've gone over our first Queen of the Mountain of the day, Anouska Costa, taking the maximum points of 6. The Dutch rider and former Dutch road race champion for UNOX Mobility, taking those points, and no doubt that they'll want to try and come away after stage 1. We'll be on the podium, at least with a jersey, and of course they've got great options for one of their sprinters in Anina Atasalo. We've got some of the biggest riders in the world who are competing here, including Lorena Wiebes. We've got a 2-time overall winner in Lizzie Deignan, who is here. She's sitting in third wheel, just getting as low and aerodynamic as possible. The former world champion coming from Otley. We've also got Ali Wollaston, Anna Henderson, Olympic medalist. Chiara Consoni's here, as well as Martina Fidanza. Both riders have been world champion on the track. We've also got Letizia Paternoster and Nina Atasalo. Kat Ferguson, the up-and-coming bright British talent, including Imogen Wolfe of Visma Lisa Bike. We've also got Gladys Verhulst-Wild, as well as Kim Lecourt, the winner of Liège-Bastogne-Liège, in her first race back after winning that monument, becoming the first African rider to win a monument. We've also got Charlotte Cole, wearer of the yellow jersey in the Tour de France Femme avec Swift. We've also got Lauren Dickinson, the Scottish rider for Hansling Alba. Watch out for her, she's been in exceptional form over the last month or so. We've also got Jess Roberts, as well as Robin Clay. A couple of the riders there for the Great Britain national team, including Jess Roberts. We're into really fast rolling roads now. The Olympic road race champion, that is the American rider in the US national champions colours. Kristen Faulkner, of course, Olympic road race champion, Olympic team pursuit champion. Really is a skill and art to be in such close proximity within a peloton. 42.1 kilometres of racing to go.
Yeah, so they're now on this kind of fast descent, but as soon as they reach the bottom of this, they're going to be straight into the next climb. So, you know, we see riders like Kristen Faulkner really keeping herself up near the front, because if you're too far back on this descent and then you hit the steep gradients at the bottom of the next climb, then you're going to be in trouble. And actually the first part of the climb is really where it's most difficult. That's the steep section. I think we were talking earlier, and there are gradients of 13, 14, 15% in the first couple of 100 metres of the next climb. So riders really need to make sure that they keep themselves in a good position on this descent.
Before we get to the second and final Queen of the Mountain of the day, let's have a little think of riders to watch out for and who could be real key contenders, as now we see the first appearance of Team SD Works Pro Time, and that's in the form of the European champion Lorena Wiebes. You can see her there in that white jersey, the black shorts with the blue band around the chest. She flicks the elbow. She's got Marta Lack alongside her, as well as one of the teammate, and that looks like it's Barbara Gorischke.
I think this is what we were talking about earlier. It was interesting to see Lorena Wiebes just move herself up to the front and then almost kind of call up two of her teammates past her. So they know that this is a point in the race where they really need to be at the front. They need to be kind of making sure they're in control and dictating the race to the other teams rather than being dictated to.
Yeah, Lisa Van Bello, one of their new signings, the other rider alongside Marta Lack. So towards the front, Picnic Postonel in the indigo jerseys and the orange stripe there on the left-hand side of the road. They've got a really strong contingent of riders, including Raquel Barbieri, Megan Jastrab, Charlotte Cole, Josie Nelson, the British rider, Esme Peppercamp, as well as Mara Roldan, the Canadian. Really fast section of road. Faulkner taking as much speed as possible on that sweeping right-hand bend, as did Marta Lack.
You can see the length of the bunch through here, though, and this is the kind of danger. You know, as kind of the roads narrow a little bit, you come into a slightly more built-up area, the bunch just suddenly stretches out. And what that means is that as soon as they get to the steep gradients at the bottom of the climb and somebody just pushes on really hard, the riders that are at the back of the peloton are suddenly going to be, you know, quite a long way behind.
And ultimately, you're having to use so much more energy.
Exactly, you know, the race is already going really hard up the classified climb, riders fighting for those points, fighting for that jersey, and then suddenly the riders at the back are having to kind of work even harder because they're having to close the gap that's opened and then also try and keep pace.
Well, the sun's shining, dry roads ahead over the little bridge. Going to get to the base of this climb in 400 metres. This is going to be Langburn's bank, a 1.9 kilometre climb. 1.9 kilometres, averaging 6.6%. The base of the climb, however, is extremely difficult. You've got gradients of 13, 14, 15 and even 16% where it tops out. Faulkner, the Olympic road race champion, takes them through the Queen of the Mountain. At the base of the climb, Langburn's bank awaits. Weave is right on the wheel of the Olympic road race champion.
Yeah, the protagonists that we were talking about at the start were really all up near the front there. They know how crucial this section of the race is. Anna Henderson was the little track rider up there as well, and yeah, you can just tell as somebody in the peloton, as soon as those kind of riders are moving up towards the front, you know that that's where you need to try and be as well, which is easier said than done.
This rider here is starting to get distanced. This is one of the riders from Hansling Alba Development Road Team. This is Amy Gornall. Ordinarily a very good climber, but on such a day where it's been so fast and it's been a real, almost whittling down process in some aspects at the back of this peloton. It's not necessarily riders going off the front, but just riders unable to stay in the peloton.
Yeah, it's the attritional nature of the roads and the profile of today's stage. I think, yeah, it's almost going to be more riders kind of falling off the back than kind of groups going off the front, I think. And here we see Kim LaCourt just really pushing the pace, and that's just going to make life so much more difficult for those riders who are already struggling at the back. 1.9 kilometres sounds like a short climb, especially in comparison to the over 6 kilometres we've just had, but after what they've already faced, it's gonna, I think, well, we're seeing it splitting now.
Well, look at this. The Mauritian Road Race champion Kim Lecourt of AG Insurance Soudal is the rider who is deciding what happens on the road here. And even the Olympic Road Race champion Kristen Faulkner in that blue jersey can't hang on to the wheel of the Mauritian. Anna Henderson doing a sterling job to try and come forward. Kim Lecourt in that white jersey of AG Insurance Soudal. She takes a look over her left-hand shoulder. The winner of Liège-Bastogne-Liège on a return to racing after that mid-season break is the rider who is being so decisive on the road. She comes with high hopes, high ambitions, and she's clearly once again in top form and top shape. And look at the gap that's starting to open up already to the riders behind. And Henderson with gritted teeth and the shoulders starting to rock and roll. She takes a look over her shoulder and there's no one in the wheel. She has to be there for Little Trek. Kristen Faulkner seemingly looks as though she's found a rhythm. She's got that vivid style, seated acceleration, high cadence.
You can see how hard they're each pushing on here, because the gaps even between these three at the front are opening. Never mind the gap then to the rest of the peloton. And you know, if these riders decide to push on after the top of this climb, these gaps are just going to grow.
This is incredible from Kim Lecourt. They're going to get to the top of the climb in 500 meters time. Anna Henderson, she's only seeing the gap start to open up, daylight between her and Faulkner. And Faulkner's got a decision to make now. She knows she can't let Kim Lecourt gain any more time, and if she can just try and hold on over the top of this climb here, Hayley, once they go over the top and you've got that little bit of respite and you've got the descent, she could try and get back onto the wheel. But for Kim Lecourt, she's just in control mode.
Absolutely. I think it would actually be beneficial to her, though, if she did, you know, not sit up and wait for Kristen Faulkner, but try and join forces with Kristen Faulkner for the next section that's to come. Because after this bit of descent, they've got some headwind section to come as well. And you know, it's a lot nicer having a bit of company in that rather than just being completely by yourself. So, you know, what we might see is she'll go over the top of the climb, take the points at the top of the climb, and then, you know, almost just kind of take a bit of a breather, not just, you know, loosen off completely, but just you know, let Kristen Faulkner join her, and then they can work together and probably have a better chance of staying ahead of the peloton.
Well, this is a considerable gap to the peloton, and this is the largest that we've seen throughout the whole stage, over the top of Langburn's bank. And it's Kim Lecourt who takes the 6 points on this categorised 2. It's the Olympic Road Race champion Kristen Faulkner who takes the 5 points.
You can see Kim Lecourt just keep glancing over her shoulders just to see what that gap is to Kristen Faulkner, and kind of make a judgment on what she does in terms of her pace here.
This is the chasing group, including Caroline Swinkles, who looks like she gets the 4 points. Still there in the group is Lorena Wiebes. You've also got Marta Lack, who's there, Emma Norsgaard. Trying to close the gap is one of the riders from AG Insurance Soudal, the teammate of Kim Lecourt Piana. Still there is Kat Ferguson. Great to see the young British rider still in that front group in the chase. Number 45, this is Mira Knaven, the 20-year-old Dutch rider in the pink jersey. Over the top, and you can hear from the motorbikes the wind as well.
Yeah,
it doesn't relent.
It's really exposed as well. You know, you've not got hedgerows to kind of protect them a little bit. It's really open, so they're going to be absolutely feeling it. And you know, you can see the roads as well. They're draggy. They're not kind of smooth and fast rolling. So it's going to be tough now.
Made that 90-degree left-hand turn. The wind is coming directly onto the left-hand shoulder of these riders. A couple of riders really in some difficulty. This is Sofia Bertazzola, number 12 in the white jersey. She's also got one of the riders from Visma Lease Bike for company. And soon, Kim Lecourt is going to have company in the form of the Olympic Road Race champion Kristen Faulkner, number 42.
I think with 35 kilometres to go, actually having Kristen Faulkner there is going to be actually quite beneficial for Kim Lecourt, and it gives them a much better chance of staying away as a pair. But what's nice is having kind of listened to both of them give interviews at the top of the stage and talking about the ambitions of the team and how they were going to take the racing on. And you know, Kim LaCourt was saying how she thought the team could be aggressive, get a stage win, perhaps even get the general classification win, and to then see her do this on this first stage is it's quite nice to watch.
It's brilliant to watch, isn't it? And even for Kim LaCourt, she said the last time I raced here, and the first time she raced here was back in 2015. She finished last in the general classification, and for her, she been racing at top level. She took a step away from the sport, and only a couple of years ago made that decision to come back. She knew she could be one of the big protagonists in cycling. She can be one of the top riders in the world. She comes from a mountain bike background as well, so she's got all of those technical skills. And for her, she's proven, she's delivered. And I know for Natasha van Ouden, who gave her that shot, gave her that chance at AG Insurance Soudal, and really took a big gamble. But the gamble paid off, but also Kim LaCourt stuck to her word, and she said, look, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna be one of the top riders, and she's done just that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, look at the results she's had this season. It's been an incredible season for her, and you know, so well deserved. And cycling, we've spoken about it a lot over the last few years, just as a sport. You know, mentally it's difficult as well as physically, and you know, if you're going through a hard time, then sometimes, you know, you need to kind of step away for a little bit. But then actually, if you kind of think, you know what, I think I can be back on top of my game, I think I can contend with the best in the world, and then just really focus on that, and then to be given the opportunity, and then, you know, you feel that you just want to work as hard as you can to repay the opportunity that you've been given. And it's great to see that everything's come together for her.
I always say you can have all the talent in the world, but if you're not given the opportunity to show yourself, you're never going to be able to make it to the top part of the sport, or to be able to prove that you are capable of doing it. So it's when that talent and opportunity meets the right scenario, the right situation.
And that's when you can get, you know, some incredible like stories come out of the sport, and I think that's what we've had with Kim LaCourt this year, and you know, the Liège-Bastogne-Liège victory.
It certainly is, and for her 6th place at Flèche Wallonne, incredible win at Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Hasn't raced since the end of April, but taken a much needed break, mental break, physical break. Get some solid training in as well, and get a real good training block in for the second part of the season, particularly looking towards this Lloyds Tour of Britain Women. No doubt that she'll have selection for the Tour de France as well.
The season's really long as well now. You know, the women's season used to be much shorter, but now we're starting in January, February. You know, Kim LaCourt started racing in the UAE Tour at the beginning of February. So, you know, you can't just hold that top form for, you know, 10 months. So it's really important to kind of have that step away from racing, and maybe go to altitude, get a really solid training block in, and then come back for the second half of the season. And mentally you need the break as well, because the focus that you need to race week in, week out, and travel and everything else, you know, it does take its toll.
That's one thing I want to come to you on training camps and altitude camps, and how that's changed. Because you're seeing more and more teams are going on altitude training camps. I've seen, particularly with EF Education Oatly, with some of we've got fantastic fans, haven't we, at the roadside here, of course, enjoying all of the action. But for those riders, it's so important when you've got such important races, and like this one where you want to come and you want to have great form, it's important to have those training camp opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on the men's side of the sport, we've seen it a lot more and for a lot longer. But now with kind of the growth of the World Tour for the women, and you know, the introduction of the Women's World Tour teams and everything else, there's been kind of that greater investment in the women's side of the sport. You've got the same level of sports scientists and the resources that the men have had. There's more knowledge, and the sport is just generally more professionalised, so it gives the women the opportunity to be concentrating on it absolutely full time, so they can go and have the same kind of you know, opportunities in terms of the altitude camps, have the same input from the team staff, and everything's just more scientific now, I think. And we see the results from how riders really focus on certain points of the season, certain races, and how they're much more able to kind of hit those targets because they have, you know, they have the structure within their training plan of this is when I'm going to go to altitude, this is when I'm going to come back from altitude. We're doing analysis the whole time that I'm there to see what's going on. This is how much time I need between coming off altitude and then being in my peak performance. And everyone just kind of, you know, people know that now, and it really kind of makes the riders able to hit the form that they want at the time they want.
Even for riders picking which races, for Hutton-le-Hole, for example, skipping Paris-Roubaix Femme, where she finished in the top 10 last year, to say, no, look, I want to go to the Ardennes Classics, I want to try and win and perform there. She did just that. She won Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and now she comes back in top flight, in good form. Another sharp, fast descent coming up, 25%, and far better for these two riders to be in this scenario, this situation, with such a fast descent coming up after that long drag over the unclassified part of the climb, than to be fighting for position in a peloton.
Yeah, absolutely. It's much easier, especially with, you know, roads kind of narrowing a little bit as well, and having kind of the rougher surface at the edge. They can really just pick their line as well. So, but also having each other. I think that's why we saw Hutton-le-Hole keep looking over her shoulder to kind of see where Kristen Faulkner was. But in terms of kind of being able to pick your calendar, as you said, I think that's where it's really nice to have kind of that good relationship and that trust between rider and team management, because it means that they can sit down, not just at the start of the season, but also during the season, and say, look, this is where I really want to perform, and this is what I think I need in order to be able to perform. And having those really good relationships between riders and staff, I think, is what then gets the best out of the riders on the team. And actually, I think that's something that we've seen with this AG Insurance Soudal team over the last few years. Actually, some of the riders have been maybe performing above expectations. You know, you saw Justine Guesquière at Tour de France Femme last year. You know, nobody necessarily expected her to have the results there that she did. And I think just the kind of the trust and the relationship and the planning between rider and staff just gets the best out of everyone, and you know, it leads to these results.
I think that's impressive, isn't it, when you've got a team who are able to have these great results, have the great performances, and at the same time bring talent through the ranks and really look after some of the younger riders within the team, help them develop. But you've also got older riders within the team, and you've got great sports directors like Jolien Dora, you've got Danny Christmas, who's in the team car here to guide them and help them learn, give them that experience, give them the opportunity as well, and to say, look, we've got a big job on our hands. We've got some of the fastest sprinters in the world. We need to make today really difficult. We're going to take the stage by the scruff of the neck, and we're going to be the riders and the team who really dominate and control, and we make the decision as to what happens.
I think you're completely right as well about having the mix of like youth and experience, because of course it's necessary to nurture the young talent, bring the young riders through. But, you know, I almost think in a way there's too much focus on, you know, really young kind of superstars, like, and you know, just having teams full of really young riders. I think actually what you need is some of the experience as well. And you know, like for example, one of the team leaders on that team is Ashley Moorman-Passio. She's one of the most experienced riders still in the peloton, and having her there, having her experience and her knowledge to kind of pass on to the younger members of the team is invaluable. You know, you can have the best sports directors in the world, but actually if they haven't raced in some of the races themselves, then they're not going to have 100% of the knowledge that maybe someone like Ashley does have. And yeah, so I think yeah, obviously you need to invest in the future of the sport, you need to invest in the young riders, but don't necessarily look past some of the older riders, because, you know, we've seen what Hutton-le-Hole can do, having come back from a bit of a break, and, you know, having given her that opportunity, she's paid it back.
through the moorlands, through Commondale, pass through the heather moorland, which typifies the vegetation that covers around 1/3 or 44,000 hectares of the national park here. It's actually one of the largest continuous expanses of moorland in England. We've already seen the sheep that are there from the small villages of Ayton to Bilsdale. Never actually leave the moorland itself, but in the summer you can imagine that the moorland is ablaze of this pinkish purplish colour. It really is a sight to behold. Really beautiful, beautiful place if you want to come by foot, come hiking, come by bike. We're heading towards Warren Moor Mine, which is just close to our route, the next 1.5 kilometres. Heading for Redcar, which is our finish, and it's a new destination for the Lloyds Tour of Britain women. Last year we were in North Wales and in the northwest of England. Had a first stage in Greater Manchester. This year we're into the northeast of England and into southern Scotland. And I have to say, I think the organisation have done a great job of taking it to new locations, taking the race to fans around the country, giving them the opportunity to come out and support, but also it really brings diverse stages and diverse kind of racing to the different nature of the stages that we've got.
Absolutely, it's really nice to not have you know, the same thing every year or the same thing every day. And you know, the final stage of this race is kind of an echo of the World Championship course, and also a course that's been used for Commonwealth Games and previous British National Championships as well. So we've actually got some great locations on this tour. You know, we've obviously today we finish in Redcar, and then tomorrow Saltburn, and you know, Saltburn has been the location for the British National Road Race Championships the last few years, and then of course, as I just mentioned, we're also going to Glasgow, which has hosted World Championships. So you know, a lot of these riders will be familiar with that kind of circuit from the World Championships in 2023.
Yeah, if you take a look over the years, particularly over the last 10 years or so, with actually 11 years, because Glasgow of course played host to the National Road Race Championships actually back in 2013.
2013, it was my first National Road Race Championship was God, that makes me feel old, doesn't it?
You and I both, Hayley. You and I both.
Was when it was Glasgow, and yeah, obviously had the Commonwealth Games a year later, and then the Commonwealth Games will be returning there as well.
Yeah, we've also had the European Championships there, where Marta Bastianelli took the victory there. We've also, of course, had the World Championships in 2023, when Lotte Kopecky won her first road race title, the first of two, winning back-to-back, of course, in Zurich last year. Of course, the defending champion not here to defend her title for SD Worx Pro Time, but they're very confident in Lorena Wiebes, the European champion. But of course, they've got a strong challenge from their rivals. FDJ Suez are the team on the front in the blue and red jerseys, the French World Tour outfit. One of the longest standing teams in the whole of not just women's cycling, but men's cycling too. Led by Stephen Delcourt, the team manager. They've got Lars Bohm, the sports director, who's in the car, a prolific winner when he was a pro. They've got hopes and ambitions on Ali Wollaston here. They've also got Marie Linette. They've got Amber Crack, Alessia Villiers, Jade Ville and Celia Géry. They've had a good start to the season already. 11 victories. One of the most dominant teams of this season alone. SD Worx Pro Time, well, they're head and shoulders above everybody. 18 victories already. UAE Team ADQ with 13. Just coming back to the chasing group here. This is Tuntje Beekhuis. She's the Dutch rider, the 29-year-old for Uno X Mobility, in that black gilet with the ordinarily you can see underneath traditional colours of the team. That's that red jersey. We've got Anna Bader-Gruber, the sports director, alongside Alexander Wetterhall, who was a rider who used to race in the UK, used to race for what was Endura Racing back in the early 10s, around 2010, 2011 he was racing for Endura Racing, so he's very accustomed to these kind of roads. Part of the Swedish national team too, so he's top sports director. 33 seconds is the advantage for Kim LaCourte in that white jersey, the Mauritian champion, one of 5 national champions in the field. Alongside her, just on the wheel in the blue jersey, is the USA road race champion Kristen Faulkner. 33 seconds to this chasing group, which has, as you can see, been whittled down, and there's several riders who have been ejected out of the back here, Hayley.
Yeah, you can really see that kind of driving the pace on the front of this kind of peloton is riders from FDJ Suez, the Movistar team, and also Little Trek, because I think those are 3 of the main teams who really kind of obviously missed out when this break went. You know, Little Trek nearly got a rider there with Anna Henderson, and then you know, unfortunately she just couldn't quite hold the wheel of Kristen Faulkner. But you know, those are the teams that are really kind of now trying to kind of get back on terms and bring this gap down.
We'll see Movistar are contributing to the chase. They're the team with the white jerseys with the darker blue and light blue colours on. We've got 2 riders who are contributing to this chase. FDJ Suez, I already mentioned, in the darker blue with the red. You've also got a couple of riders there for Picnic Postonello in the indigo and orange jerseys. Zoe Backstead is still there.
Zoe Backstead from Canyon there as well, from the Canyon SRAM team. And I think I saw there's also at least 1 rider in there from Liverlulo Jayco as well.
We're starting to see that there's a couple of teams who are working. Who's the onus on here in the chase?
I mean, it looked to me as though Little Trek had numbers there. I think teams are going to be looking to the teams that have the most numbers. So, you know, if there's only 1 rider from Liverlulo Jayco, then, you know, they're probably not going to contribute. But you've got a couple of riders from FDJ Suez, you've got a couple from Little Trek, and they should really be sharing the workload between them to try and bring this move back, because, you know, it's for their benefit.
Taking a look down at the other teams who are represented in this chasing group, you've also got a couple of riders there from UAE Team ADQ. So there, Visma Lisa bike.
These 2 are working really well together up the front. You know, they're really kind of sharing the turns and kind of, you know, making sure that they can really get the best out of each other and out of the situation and do their absolute utmost to kind of stay away from this chasing peloton. Later on we might see games start to begin if they still have a gap in the closing kilometres, but for now what they need to do is just work together and try and make sure that they can get to the finish with a gap to the peloton, or what remains of the peloton. I kind of use that term, but it's more of a chasing group, isn't it?
But you can't rest on your laurels here.
No.
You cannot be complacent the fact that you've got a 30 yo-yo in between 31 seconds and 33 seconds, but with such a ferocious chase behind, the 2 out front, they can't become complacent. They can't start to look at each other, particularly when you've got 23.6 kilometres of racing remaining.
No, absolutely not. But at the same time, the chasing group, you know, they need to stay motivated and stay working together, because as soon as, you know, 1 rider from 1 team says, well, actually, I feel like we've done our fair share, it's now on you guys to come through and do your bit. And then if that team suddenly says, well, no, you know, we kind of think that you've got more of a job to do than us, as soon as their kind of work falls apart and they kind of start almost bickering between themselves, then the gap can grow. So, you know, what the 2 riders out front need to do is just keep a steady rhythm, keep working well together, and kind of hope they can hold their advantage.
Floortje Mackay, the rider on the front, the former winner of Gent-Wevelgem of Movistar. She's got to fully commit herself, because they've got Kat Ferguson, who is here. Aude Biani kind of return, having had her first child after having maternity leave. She's also there, the rider taking a drink of Movistar now. There is Kat Ferguson on a wheel too. So that's great news for British interest, and particularly for Kat Ferguson. She said she wants to try and take a podium in at least one of these stages, and she's already proven that she's capable of doing so. She did in one of her first World Tour races of the season at Trofeo Alfredo Binda. Breakaway enter into Great Ayton.
Maybe Kat Ferguson would be hoping that the sun hadn't quite come out, because she's taken some great victories or great podium results in not that great conditions. But it was nice hearing her speak, actually, because we know what a talent she is, but she said that her ambition is to maybe take a stage victory here. But then she also said that she knew it would be hard, and this is her first year at this level. So she's ambitious, but also she's also realistic with it. She says it's going to be difficult, but it's what I want to do, and I'll give my utmost to try and achieve that.
Into Great Ayton, the famous circumnavigator Captain James Cook lived in nearby Great Ayton as a young boy. More recently, Charlie and Harry Tanfield, two top riders, two top professionals, and both excellent track riders. And for Harry Tanfield, you're
my teammate. Yeah, I was talking to Harry just a couple of days ago, and he was saying about it going through his village. So yeah, Harry actually said that he'd almost benefited in the past few weeks from this race coming through here, because there was some nice new road surface in places. So
everyone's a winner.
I know, everyone's benefiting from the Lloyds Tour of Britain coming through.
They certainly have, and it's brilliant to see the fans roadside with the banners that they've made. Absolutely terrific to see. You've also got the Captain Cook Monument, which stands on the hill quite nearby, built in 1827 in memory of Captain James Cook. We've also got the Cleveland Way, the national trail which passes via Captain Cook's monument. Cleveland is the national trail that it winds its way through the North York Moors and the National Park along the North Yorkshire coast, starting in Helmsley, ending at Filey. Of course, always known for its dramatic coastal scenery. It's got that heather moorland as it is around here. You've also got the historic landmarks with Whitby Abbey. It's a pretty stunning part of the world to come to here, I have to say. If you've never been to Whitby Abbey, it's certainly well worth taking a day trip over there. You saw the blackboard just gave on the back of the motorbike there, the blackboard giving two riders in the breakaway the time gaps, 20 seconds now to the chasers, still led by FDJ Suez, currently led by Amber Crack. I have to say, the team of VF Education Oatley have done a tremendous job with that gold bike for Kristen Faulkner as an Olympic road race champion and a USA national road race champion.
I was admiring it earlier, I thought.
Anything bling, I know you love.
Yeah, I do love a nice bike paint job, I'll be honest. Yeah, no, it's I always like it when teams and bike companies just do like a really nice paint job just to kind of commemorate a great win. And one of my absolute favourites was Amelie de Derrickson's World Championship paint job. I absolutely love that bike, still remember it.
I agree. Yeah, they certainly do a great job. Heading in towards Newton under Rosebery, this is where we're going to have our intermediate sprint. And don't forget, bonus seconds are on offer for the first three riders. 3, 2 and 1 bonus seconds on offer, including those points for the jersey. 10, 7, 5, 3 and 1 points. 500 metres to go, and if you're wanting to try and go for general classification ambitions at the end of these 4 stages, these bonus seconds are going to be absolutely crucial.
It'll be interesting to see whether these two do actually contest it between themselves, or maybe whether Kim LaCourte kind of almost lets Kristen Faulkner.
Do you think they'll lose a little bit of their cohesion if they do fight amongst themselves for the bonus seconds and the points?
Yeah, they can do. I almost think it's beneficial just to kind of keep pushing on and not really worry that much about it. Well, we obviously just saw Kim LaCourte accelerating, but maybe she does have overall race ambitions, as she spoke about in her interview. But Kristen Faulkner didn't necessarily look too worried about putting up a fight. And sometimes what we see, if there are these kind of moves of maybe 2 riders off the front, they'll maybe have a discussion of, well, you've got the general classification ambitions, so you can have the bonus seconds, but maybe I have a stage win, or so on.
Well, behind, they're fighting for each and every bonus second. Kat Ferguson comes through with a late charge, and it looks as though the British youngster takes the 1 second. Caroline Swinkles was the rider who was challenging from UAE Team ADQ. There was no photo finish to be had of the leading duo though, because it was Kim LaCourte who took the 3 bonus seconds and the 10 points in that points classification. Kristen Faulkner taking 2 bonus seconds and the 7 points. Caroline Swinkles keeping things rolling here.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, it's kind of, sometimes when there are those intermediate sprints and then riders from that chasing group go for the sprint, it can actually work to disrupt the chase a little bit, because yes, the gap will come down as the acceleration for the sprint happens, but then potentially, unless they can kind of find their rhythm again quite quickly, the chase can be a little bit disrupted. So it's interesting to see what they do after the sprint.
Let's take a little look at this replay. It was Caroline Swinkles who struck first, made that injection of pace. It was a very late charge from Kat Ferguson.
I almost think she didn't realise that Kat Ferguson was on her wheel there. She thought that she was the only one going for it and was almost a little bit surprised when Kat Ferguson came round.
But that's one thing that Kat Ferguson, despite being so young, only 19 years of age, has become really good at. She reads a race. She can read a race so well. She can keep herself well hidden. She knows exactly where and when she can save energy. She knows which wheels to follow.
Yeah, I was going to say, she almost just pops up at the right moment. Like, she is a great reader of a race, you know. She's... I almost was going to call her inexperienced, which is just completely unfair, because she's new to this kind of level of racing, but she's been doing it for so long. Actually, she's hugely experienced. So it might be, you know, her first year in the senior ranks in the Women's World Tour, but she's got such great knowledge of the racing.
And just to give context for potentially any new viewers who are watching the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women here, for Kat Ferguson, last year she was a junior, so you're in the under-18 ranks, and this year is her first year as a fully fledged World Tour pro. Already she's had a victory at the back end of last season when she was as a stagiaire for Movistar. She's already had some top results this season alone, already a podium in Trofeo Alfredo Binda. You can't underestimate how impressive that is when the level of the racing, where we're currently at, is at its best it's ever been. And you've got a 19-year-old who's able to podium at the top level of the sport. Is something special. She certainly should be one of the riders that you've got highlighted, keeping an eye out for throughout the next 4 stages. 22 seconds. Ooh, Faulkner gets that corner wrong. She loses the momentum, and that just shows how quickly things can change at the front of the race. So inside 15 kilometres to go. Kim LaCourte, well, now she's got a big decision on her hands. Is she going to sit up and wait for the Olympic road race champion? She takes so much speed, she takes the apex of the line, correct, but then you've got the central reservation here. LaCourte goes on the left-hand side, and for Faulkner, she just about saves that one.
This is what I was talking about with some of the difficulties of British racing, because yes, there were marshals kind of standing on the corner with the flags, with whistles, but most of the riders will have assumed that what they were doing was signalling that there was a right-hand corner, not necessarily that there was a traffic island in the middle of the road. And as you can see from the camera angle, it was impossible to see until actually after you'd taken the corner, and by that point you're kind of already committed to your line. So yes, you might then see some fluorescent pink on the curb, but once you're committed to your line, it can be very difficult to change it mid-corner, especially given that the roads are still a little bit slick. They're not completely dry. So, you know, Kristen Faulkner did a really good job there to kind of save that, and now obviously she's regrouped with Kim LaCourte, and, you know, they're now having obviously a bit of a chat and are kind of finding their rhythm again.
Great sportsmanship from Kim LaCourte. She just eases off ever so slightly, allows her breakaway companion to get back onto the wheel, because she knows crucially, inside 14 kilometres to go, that it's better to have someone to help her. It's better to have a wheel. It's better to have that option to sit on the wheel, get a little bit of respite. 2 is better than 1.
Absolutely. And what I find quite interesting looking at that chase group behind is there are 3 little Trek riders in there, and I don't think I've seen them on the front of that chasing group yet. And, you know, we're getting to kind of a nearly 30-second advantage with 14 kilometres to go. The gap's actually gone up a little bit, not come down. The three?
There's 4 riders
Four.
there. Just getting a closer look at that motorbike shot, we've got Lizzie Deignan, who is there, the former world road race champion and silver medalist at the Olympic Games in 2012. You've got Rianne Marcus, the former Dutch time trial champion. You've also got Loretta Hansen, super domestique extraordinaire, and you've got the Olympic medalist from Paris 2024 in Anna Henderson. So the Little Trek have got 4 of the 5 riders that they've brought to the race. The only rider that we can't see is Emma Norsgaard, and they're one of the bigger teams who aren't contributing here. It's still all down to Movistar in the white jerseys with the navy blue band across the chest. You've also got FDJ Suez, who are still committing with Amber Crack in the dark navy blue and red jerseys.
Talking of Movistar and obviously of Kat Ferguson, what's also really nice is that, you know, Kat Ferguson has gone to Movistar, you know, one of the biggest teams, and you know, you can tell how much they believe in her, because they're obviously instructing their team to kind of commit to helping her, you know, achieve a podium on this stage in this race. So, you know, it's not just the case that, you know, that she's gone to this team and kind of had to almost take a bit of a back seat, a learning role, because, you know, you've only just come up from juniors, you know, you kind of need to learn, you know, learn this level a little bit. They can see how much talent she has and how much potential she has, and they're backing her. They're not just kind of waiting for her to kind of prove herself, so to speak. They're giving her the opportunity to have those results and prove herself, and that's nice to see as well.
If you're just joining us, welcome to stage 1 of the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women. Stage 1 taking the riders from Dalby Forest to Redcar, 81.5 kilometres of racing across some of the harshest and attritional terrain, 1,173 metres of elevation. We've had 2 Queen of the Mountains, both categorised 2. Kim LaCourt, the rider who took maximum points on Langburn's bike, the second categorised climb of the day. It was Anuska Costa who took maximum points on the first one on Blakey Ridge. It was on Langburn's bank, that 1.9 kilometre climb with an average gradient of 6.6%, but with brutal gradient at the base of the climb of 16%, where Kim LaCourt made her move. That meant that things started to fragment. It was Kristen Faulkner, the Olympic road race champion, who could follow. Anna Henderson could follow before she started to get tailed off towards the top part of the climb. And since then, we've had 2 riders who have been in the breakaway with a maximum advantage of 33 seconds. They've been working well together, and they're heading for Redcar, a host of a stage of the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women for the very first time. My name's Hannah Walker. Alongside me is Hayley Simmons. We've got a chase group that is ferociously trying to get themselves back to the front of the race, and then a larger chase group behind that, which consists of some of the top names. Stage 1, well, we're already starting to see potential time gaps open up in the general classification. 28 seconds to our chasers. And it's still FDJ Suez who are on the front in those blue and red jerseys. Behind in the peloton, we've got Liv Alula-Jayco in those purple jerseys, who are trying to bring things back as close as possible. We've also got a couple of riders there from Visma Lisa Bike. Sarah Tizet Pro Cycling are there with a number of riders. And these 2 riders, knowing that for their respective teams, perhaps they didn't bring one of the top flight sprinters, they've taken the race into their own hands.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we spoke about it earlier, but they knew the point on the course where they would have the best opportunity to kind of make a difference to this race, and they really took advantage of that. And Kim LaCourt made it look easy a little bit, didn't she? And which just goes to show the form that she's on. And, you know, all you have to do is look at some of her results from this season to show that. But she really took the race into her own hands, and has that'll dominate what happens at the end of the stage.
Picking out a number of riders that are in that peloton in the purple jerseys. Letizia Paternoster was there. So looked as though Georgia Baker was there. We also saw Josie Nelson of Picnic Postanel. This is hanging in the balance now. 25 seconds inside 10 kilometres remaining.
It's not really gone down.
It hasn't. And for Kristen Faulkner, that's could be costly. This is fuel.
you know, at one point with that intermediate sprint, the chase group kind of had brought the gap down to 16 seconds, but it's gone up a little bit again since then. And I wonder if, you know, we've said that a lot of the work here is being done by the Movistar team, but they've only got those two riders at the front kind of trying to close this gap, and at some point they might feel the fatigue, and there'll only be so much that they can do. And yeah, the gap is not closing at the moment. So if these two keep working together well at the front, then, you know, we could see them get to the finish together. These will be roads that actually some of the British riders in the race will recognise, because this has actually been used as part of the National Road Race course the last few years. I think currently they're going in the opposite direction, but that bridge was on last year's course. So some of the British riders will kind of know what they're facing in these closing 9 kilometres.
Zetland and Floortje Mackay, the two riders from Movistar who are sharing the workload. Zetland, one of the most experienced riders in the peloton, turned pro back in 2013 with Michele Finani Rock's team, an Italian team. Floortje Mackay, another incredibly experienced rider, turned pro straight out of the junior ranks. And for Zetland, a special mention to the rider from Brittany, from Ladanu, on a return to racing. A handful of races in the pocket after being out of action and being out of the pro peloton for a year or so. Had her first child, and many congratulations to Zetland, and you can't underestimate, this is an incredible return to racing after having your first child and making a return to top flight racing.
Absolutely, and we've seen quite a few women doing it over the last few years. You know, Ellen van Dijk has recently had a child. Obviously, Lizzie Dignan's come back from 2 children. So the support that the teams now give the women in terms of allowing them to have that little break and then start a family and then come back to racing is, you know, is a really nice change that we've seen in the women's side of the sport. And obviously riders have proved that they can do it.
Now we're seeing the gap, 24 seconds, over a minute to the peloton, and still Kim Lecourt, number 103, the Mauritian champion, kicks on.
They just really need to keep working together and cohesively for, you know, as long as they can. I mean, ideally 7.4 kilometres or maybe 7.3, just to give themselves the absolute best opportunity to stay ahead of these chasers.
If you were FDJ Suez or Movistar and you've got 2 riders from each team who are contributing to this chase, but you've got Lidl Track, you've got 4 riders represented, would you not send one of your riders back to ask for Lidl Track to lend a rider to this chase?
Personally, I would. I'm really surprised that they are just kind of sitting back at the moment. I suppose whilst the riders from FDJ and Movistar seem happy to work without asking, then, you know, it's actually to their advantage to you know, maybe let them do it. But at the same time, if that gap continues to stay at 20 seconds and doesn't close further, then they'll also lose out. I suppose the other thing to consider is that Lorena Wiebes is in this chasing group, and if you take Lorena Wiebes back to the front of the race in sight of the finish line, then there's a really strong possibility that she's going to be crossing that line first. So, you know, there are lots of considerations, and they'll have the director kind of talking to them through the race radios and giving them kind of the best instructions possible.
She's been keeping herself well hidden, Lorena Wiebes, the European champion. I was going to say, I mean, the way that we spoke about it before on that first Queen of the Mountain, the way that she's able to hide herself away, she's able to keep herself tucked in, save energy. She becomes anonymous sometimes. Her ability to do that, her tactical nous is just incredible. And then she's got the engine to back it up. We've got one rider who's in this group from the Great Britain national team as well. Dominika Wladysek, the Polish road race champion, is here for UAE Team ADQ. They've also got the fast finisher in Caroline Swinkels. Watch out for the Dutch rider. Wax Mobility have got one rider likewise. Watch out for the red jerseys of the Norwegian outfit. 21 seconds, it's still yo-yoing here.
It is, but you know, we've in the last 10 kilometres we've not really seen any change, which which, I don't know, suggests to me that these two are actually probably quite likely at this point to hang on.
Quinty Ton is in the move. She's the rider in the purple jersey for Liv Alula-Jayco. She's sitting 6 wheels back. One of the only riders represented for Liv Alula-Jayco.
I think it's possible we might see a little bit more of their jerseys kind of later on in the week, possibly on the Glasgow stage. I think, you know, that's a team that have a really good opportunity on that stage. You know, of course, they'll have to battle with the likes of Lorena Wiebes, but, you know, they'll be desperate to take a win this year.
Final turn of this stage will come with 2.2 kilometres to go. They'll go through the 2 kilometre kite. They're going to have the sea on the right-hand side, and then it's a straight run in all the way into our finish in Redcar. It's a really fast finish, and this is only going to benefit those chasing behind. What's the wind doing at this running into our final?
It's going to be almost a direct crosswind, actually. The wind's coming from the southwest today, so they'll have a crosswind to battle on that final stretch. And, you know, we are right on the seafront here, so it could be felt quite strongly. You know, luckily they don't have too much to deal with in terms of any turns. They have a traffic island, one traffic island within the last 2 kilometres, but that shouldn't really pose too much difficulty. So, yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see whether any more headway can be made by this chasing group, or whether Kim LaCourte and Kristen Faulkner just about managed to hold on.
Inside 4 kilometres to go, the gap still at 19 seconds, and still the chase being led by FDJ Suez and Movistar. They still haven't got any assistance from any other team, but now Zoe Backstead starts to move her way up. She's the only rider in this group for Canyon SRAM's Onda Gripto. Watch out for the young Welsh rider. They go around the roundabout, they go separate sides. It's the left side that's the quickest, they keep the momentum. Caroline Swinkle still there. Lorena Wiebes has moved herself up from the back of the group, and now she moves herself up into the top 10 through 3 kilometres to go. And Kim LaCourte-Pierna, she's got the ocean and she's got the sea just ahead of her. You can see the way that the flags are flying high. They make that left-hand turn. Still the Olympic road race champion is on the wheel. She flicks the elbow, and it's Kristen Faulkner who now comes through.
It was interesting because there have been several times where I've thought that, you know, one of the Movistar riders and one of the FDJ Suez riders had kind of finished doing their work and almost drifted back in the group, and then they've had to come to the front yet again because no other team seems that motivated to take it on. So it really is just being left to riders from those 2 teams to desperately try and bring these 2 riders back.
This has been an incredible performance from this duo. It was all kicked off by Kim LaCourte, and right now, could the breakaway steal the march and take the victory between the 2 of them? Which one is it going to be? Can they outwit the chasing group? 19 seconds.
And it's going to feel like a long stretch now to the finish. You can really see how strong that crosswind was, because obviously we spoke about the flags, but then just the formation of the riders in that chase group behind. You know, they're kind of fanned across the road in what we would call an echelon, and that's just indicating to you the strength of that wind.
Rihanna Mark is still there. Loretta Hansen is there for Lidl Trek. Lizzie Deignan is taking a look round. The road captain for Lidl Trek is just trying to shout some instruction by the seams of things.
I wonder
Could
if
it be too late now?
I wonder if they've just realised that they've left this a little bit late, because with basically 2 kilometres remaining and 18 seconds, and that gap just hasn't been changing enough. So something would have to drastically happen in order for them to come back.
FDJ Suez have been working, because now you get sight of Ali Wollaston, who's tucked in on the far left side. You can just see the rider from New Zealand with the skin suit on pop out on the left-hand side. Still, it's Faulkner who's on the front, number 42. Can she take victory here on stage 1 of the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women? Ord Bianic, still like a diesel engine, is pulling on the front, but the duo out front in the breakaway, they've got the 1 kilometre to go sign in their sights. They're going to go under the Flamme Rouge, and 1,000 metres remains. Amber Crack kicks on still. They still believe here for FDJ Suez that they can deliver a victory for Ali Wollaston. They still believe and they're not giving up hope. But Little Trek now come to the fore. 15 seconds. They're hoping and banking on the fact that these two are going to start to look at each other for the victory. And perhaps that could give the chasing group the time that they need. Sarah Van Dam is at the back of the group for Sarah Tizzett in the blue and red jersey. There's Cecilia Uchub-Ludwig. She's there in the black jersey, just out of the saddle now for Canyon Strand Zonda Crypto. She's also got Zoe Backstead with the Red Bull helmet on. But still, they've got the advantage.
I think they've left it too late. I think they've miscalculated slightly. I think Little Trek maybe needed to come and do some work just a little bit earlier, because it's going to be close, but these two, unless they really sit up and start looking at each other, they have this now.
300 metres to go, and it's Kim LaCour-Piana who hugs the right-hand side of the road. Now she starts to open up, and it's the Mauritian champion who was the rider who kicked off this breakaway. It's a strong challenge from the Olympic road race champion, Kristen Faulkner. Faulkner trying to come alongside the Mauritian champion, but Kim LaCour is too strong, but she is going to be close on the line. Kim LaCour wins stage 1 of the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women for AG Insurance Soudal. Behind is Lorena Wiebes, who takes third. Kristen Faulkner taking second. Well, there's going to be some questions after that, but for now, what a performance from Kim LaCour and Kristen Faulkner taking first and second on stage 1. Kim LaCour, what a performance on return to racing after that magnificent win in Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
I think to say that you're going to try and win a stage and maybe the race, and then come out and ignite that first stage like that, and then take the win is just so impressive. I'm so impressed with Kim LaCour's riding today.
Well, fortune favours the brave, and it's certainly fortune the brave today. There'll be some questions. Why didn't certain teams lend a hand? Why didn't they commit and put riders to the front? Well, what an execution between these two, LaCour and Faulkner. You couldn't have asked for a more cohesive duo in the break.
I was just about to say that just shows the maturity, and, you know, they work so well together, and if they hadn't worked well together, then, you know, they would have been caught. We saw at the end with the sprint being kind of launched behind them that I think the gap was about 7 seconds when Lorena Wiebes crossed the line in third. But, you know, there was just so much maturity the whole time. Kim LaCour waited a little bit at the top of the climb, obviously after the kind of mishap after the corner. They just worked so well together.
This was the moment when they went through 300 metres to go. Kim LaCour wanting to hook the right-hand side of the road here. Talk us through this sprint, because even if you're not sprinting from a big bunch, Hayley, you still have to be smart, knowing which part of the road you want to be, protection from the wind.
Yeah, exactly, and you know, bunch sprinters will do their research on the final few hundred metres of the race, and they'll know, like, if there's any road furniture, where the wind's likely to come from, if there's a narrowing, anything like that. So, you know, it really does pay to have done your homework. But what was quite nice here is obviously they were fighting for the stage win, but at the same time they didn't just kind of sit up and look at each other, because they were both fully aware that if that had happened, it would have opened the door for Wiebes behind to then come and take the stage win. So, you know, they were doing their best to kind of take as much advantage as they could and have enough rest in the wheel, but then at the same time give themselves the first and second places and not have it stolen from them.
Kristen Faulkner, well, she came close. She tried to come alongside LaCour. In the end, the Mauritian champion, too strong. A brilliant team performance all round. I think for the team, they're almost speechless. You see the facial expressions and the way they're reacting to this win of Kim LaCour. Alexandra Manley, a part of this team there. Kim LaCour just having a word with Gladys Verhulst-Wild.
It just strikes me kind of from the outside, not knowing some of the individuals on the team, but obviously not knowing the team kind of from the inside. It strikes me that the atmosphere is really good, and they're all friends. They all want each other to succeed, and, you know, it sounds a cliche, happy head, fast legs, but having that really nice positive dynamic lends itself to these kind of amazing performances.
And the joy And reaction there from the sports director, Danny Christmas. You can just see a well-executed plan all round. You can all make a plan. Riders can make the plan as well as the sports directors of what you want to do, but you still have got to have the legs to deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing that's really important is you might know that you have the form, but you don't necessarily know how you're going to feel on any given day. And then having the kind of maturity within a race to say either, girls, today is my day, please back me, or actually today is not my day, let's go for someone else, and being able to make those calls on the road and then as a team fully commit to those calls, that's really important.
Wow, Project General Classification is firmly on.
It's nice to see Danny Christmas coming and like joining in the celebrations as well, and she's a really good person to have in your team car on this race as well. Obviously, you know, as a British rider, very experienced. She'll know the road, she'll know what the racing is or what kind of racing we're likely to see here, and how best to kind of take advantage of the terrain and everything else. And yeah, it's nice to see her kind of joining in this victory.
The wonderful thing is as well to see how close fans can also get to the riders, to long-time supporter of the women's peloton, Dave White there, just congratulating. But we see the front-on shot of this sprint, and in the end, it was a handful of seconds between the duo hanging on for the breakaway and Lorena Wiebes winning the bunch sprint behind.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think there will be some questions about, you know, why that kind of 7-second gap or whatever it was at the end couldn't have been kind of brought back. You know, it was so close, and it was two riders against, I don't know, how many were in that chase group, 12, 15, something like that. You know, a decent proportion of riders, and several riders from you know, one team. There maybe could have been a bit more cohesion, but, you know.
Any questions tonight in the team bus as they assess the situation, do you think, particularly within Little Track?
Maybe. I think the one thing to say is obviously the time gap was small at the end, so it's not like they let a group go that then got several minutes and that's almost kind of race over. So everything's kind of catchable in terms of the overall race, but, you know, potentially there could have been a stage win at play here.
Or maybe they were being very smart, thinking, well, look, we just want to make sure that we can limit our losses in the general classification, but Wiebes is there, and she's one of the fastest on two wheels. There is our top five. Kim LaCourt wins stage one of the Lloyds Tour of Britain ahead of Kristen Faulkner. Lorena Wiebes in the end taking third place at 5 seconds ahead of Linda Zanardi, and Kat Ferguson, the young British rider, taking 5th place. Maybe for Little Track they were thinking, well, if Lorena Wiebes is here, look,
she's probably going to beat us all.
Beat us all, so we just want to make sure we're still in contention for the general classification. Yeah. We want to try and save our energy for particularly a big day on stage 3.
Exactly, you know, they let the other teams do the work, maybe expend more of their energy, whilst keeping actually 4 of their 5 riders on pretty much the same time as the stage winner.
Well, let's take a little look at how stage 1 unfolded, starting from Dalby Forest. At that neutralised start, there is Caroline Swinkles, Dominika Wladysek, one of 5 national champions in the race, including USA national champion Faulkner. You've got Kim LaCourt, the Mauritian champion, Grove, the South African champion, Atasalo, the Finnish champion, and there is the Polish champion, having a good little discussion, all smiles at the start of stage 1 before the flag was waved and they were officially underway. Hayley, a relatively short stage than perhaps what we're used to. However, it's hard from the beginning of this stage.
It was, and you know, short stages do not normally actually mean more exciting. I was going to say do not necessarily mean boring, but actually it's almost always the opposite. And these short stages, especially one like today with quite a lot of altitude meters per kilometre raced, they lend themselves to some really aggressive riding, and that's what we saw today.
It was fast-paced, and anybody who wanted to attempt to force a breakaway, well, it was nullified. No surprise, really, when you've got these kinds of roads, the difficult terrain, And the fact that with it being short, you couldn't allow someone to get up the road, particularly not a strong breakaway, onto the first queen of the mountain of the day. This was Blakey Ridge, a second categorised climb, 6.4 kilometres long with an average gradient of 3.9%. Exposed over the moorland. That didn't deter from the fact that the pace was relentless, set by Little Trek with Rihanna Marcus, also Alice Towers of Canyon SRAM's Under Crypto. It was hotly contested though for the point to the top of the Queen of the Mountain in the black jersey, and Iska Costa coming through and taking the maximum points ahead of Dominika Wlodaszek. It was Margot Vigie in the yellow jersey of Visma Leasebike who took points too. Discarding of their rain jackets as the temperatures started to get a little bit warmer and the sun did finally make an appearance. Over the top of that climb and over the top of the moors, the attention turned into the next Queen of the Mountain of the day, and that was Langburn's Bank, the harder of the two. Shorter, but by no means easier. Average gradient of 6.6%, and this was where we started to see a change and a shift in the race.
Yeah, I think that descent right into the bottom of this climb was really where kind of the intentions were set. You know, you saw Kristen Faulkner right at the front on the descent and Kim LaCourt come through, and then Kim LaCourt really attacked the steep part of the bottom of this climb. That first 350, 400 metres were the hardest parts of the climb, and you know, she set such a fast, solid pace up this climb. Only Kristen Faulkner could actually follow her by the top of this climb. And then, you know, we saw some really smart kind of cohesion. Kim LaCourt sat up a little bit, waited for Kristen Faulkner so that she would have, you know, somebody there with her to work for the remaining kilometres of this stage and really give themselves the best opportunity to kind of stay away from any chasers.
A well-committed, cohesive duo. An Olympic road race champion and the Mauritian champion adding force into the intermediate sprint of the day. Bonus seconds on offer, but also points towards that points classification jersey. And behind, there was only commitment from two teams, Movistar and FDJ Suez. Into the intermediate sprint, Faulkner didn't really challenge Pierna, or LaCourt Pierna. Was indeed the rider of AG Insurance Soudal in the white jersey with the multicoloured bands around the chest, who took the 3 bonus seconds and the 10 points in that classification. This was a bit of a shift and a change and a bit of a worrying moment because they took the apex of the corner. Kristen Faulkner managed to save it when she got to that central reservation and at the traffic island. And like a great team player and a great rival, Kim LaCourt waited for Faulkner and the duo were back in full flight.
That could have been the moment where that breakaway came completely unstuck because, you know, either one or both of them could have crashed, or actually Kim LaCourt could have decided to push on at that point but not been kind of strong enough as an individual rider to stay ahead of the chasers. So it was really smart of her to kind of wait a little bit and have company for the final kilometres.
Into the final kilometre, there was no cat and mouse, there were no games being played. It was such a slender advantage that the breakaway duo had. It was full commitment. Ali Wollaston guiding her teammate Amber Crack as to where she wanted her to be, but it was all but too late because this duo stole the march. Kim LaCourt hugging the right-hand corner, right-hand side of the road, and it was the Mauritian champion who opened up first. She got the acceleration. It was a strong challenge from the Olympic road race champion in blue, but in the end, Kim LaCourt too strong. She managed to take stage 1 of the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women for AG Insurance Soudal. Faulkner settling for second. It was Wiebes who took third. Well, there we take a look at our top 10. Kim LaCourt taking the victory ahead of Faulkner. Wiebes in third with Zanatti in fourth. Kat Ferguson, the first British rider, taking fifth. Millie Cousins there in sixth. Megan Jastrab in seventh. Ali Wollaston taking eighth. Quinty Tarn in ninth. And Sarah Van Dam, the Canadian, rounding out the top 10. Ali Wollaston, she opened up early, didn't she?
Yeah, I think you're always going to have problems if you're contesting a sprint with Lorena Wiebes, though, and I think everyone in that group probably knew that.
Here's a little look at our general classification standings in the top 10, courtesy of those bonus seconds. Kim LaCourt leads 5 seconds ahead of Faulkner. Wiebes at 14 seconds with Caroline Swinkles at 17. Zanatti at 18, along with Kat Ferguson, Millie Cousins, Megan Jastrab, Ali Wollaston and Quinty Ton. Rounding out the top 10.
At the end of stage 1, but from myself and Charlene for now, thank you, and we'll be back with you shortly for the presentations. Thank you.
6 different nationalities in that top 10. You can just see the convoy of cars that are making their way to the team buses that are all parked up alongside the seafront.
I think some riders will still be rolling through for a little while yet after the damage that was done on that climb, but hopefully all riders make it home nice and safely and ready to start tomorrow's stage.
And you're quite right in saying before, just because a stage is shorter than maybe what we're used to or what we expect, it doesn't mean that you can't have thrilling, spectacular racing. And in some cases, it's even more enticing to watch and also to be a rider in that kind of stage.
Exactly. I think actually some of the more exciting stages we've seen in some of the men's Grand Tours are ones that are either intentionally shorter or have had to be shortened due to, you know, some weather issues or things like that. You know, you really see attacking riding, and you know, riders, teams are sometimes worried about you know, big gaps going, but it just leads to more aggression, I think, and it really is kind of, you know, that there's not the kind of lull in the middle of the stage that you'd get with something that's 140, 150, 160 kilometres, where riders are naturally a bit more concerned about conserving energy, particularly as part of a stage race. So I personally love these shorter stages.
Kim LaCourt, she launched early, just inside 300 metres to go. She hugged the right-hand side of the barrier. She gave Kristen Faulkner a really hard time at attempting to come round.
Yeah, you know, and it was a crosswind finish, but the wind was coming from the left-hand side, so Kim LaCourt gave herself the slightly more sheltered side, and, you know, which actually meant that as Kristen Faulkner was trying to come round her left-hand side, she was actually offering a bit of protection to Kim LaCourt on the right-hand side. So it was the smart place, smart kind of line to take there.
Tactically astute, physically in the form of her life.
And I have to say, I think we got very lucky with the weather today. It basically stopped raining as they rolled out, and then the sun shone. So
it was all part of the plan, Hayley. It's all part of the plan.
You brought the sunshine back with you from Italy, Anna. That's what happened. Can you order it up for the next 3 days as well?
Absolutely. I'll have a word with the weather gods. Well, we await our podium presentation. Oh, that's a nice sign, isn't it? A nice sight to see the teammates.
I was just about to say, this is exactly what I was saying earlier about the atmosphere within that team, because I feel like on other teams, you know, the riders would be heading back to the bus, focusing on their recovery for the next few days and, you know, getting on their turbo trainers or putting their compressions on or whatever. But what you see here are the teammates of Kim LaCourt standing and waiting to cheer her onto the podium. And I just think that kind of camaraderie and atmosphere and genuine friendship is why they're having such success at the moment.
But I guess as a teammate, if you are fully supported and you support your teammates when they've got that victory, when it's your turn to be the one who's victorious and you've got that support, it means that you're supporting each other, not just in the good times and the high times, but when a rider is maybe going through a difficult time or they've got an injury or illness, everyone's supporting each other.
Exactly, you know, you travel so much, you're away so much that your teammates often become like your family. and there are always going to be difficult times through the year for everyone on the team, and to know that people kind of have your back and they believe in you and that they will support you, and also kind of to have the maturity within the team to say, well, you know, today I think this stage is for me, so please can we work for me, but then, you know, tomorrow, the day after really suits you, and we'll support you. And all of the riders kind of know that they will have their opportunity, and by supporting their teammates, they'll get that support back in return, you know, later down the line. And I think that's what makes really successful teams. And I know that I will open Instagram later, and one of the first people that I'll see celebrating this victory is Sarah Giganti, another of Kim LaCourte's teammates, because, you know, even though she's not on this race, she will be watching, supporting, and the fact that you know that your other teammates who aren't here with you but are maybe training or on a different race, that they're also kind of celebrating you, it just creates such a good atmosphere.
So important, isn't it, for the success of a team. They're waiting for our podium presentation. Stage winner and then also to award our first leaders jersey. Of course, we've got our Queen of the Mountains jersey, as well as our points jersey and our young rider jersey.
Excellent finish line music.
I was just about to say, we've got a bit of Danza Cordero.
Very nearly broke into song without realising, and that's not something anyone wants.
That's great as well. We've got our fan zone. You've got plenty of fans who've made their way to Redcar.
I just need to travel a very small distance to enjoy some of tomorrow's stage as well.
When you take a little look at tomorrow's stage, heading from Hutton-le-Hole to Saltburn Bank, another lumpy day, 114.6 kilometres of racing, 1,392 metres of elevation. Arguably our Queen stage coming in Kelso, stage 3 on Saturday, before heading to a flatter stage, one certainly aimed for the sprinters, but as we know, anything is possible, anything can happen. It's on Sunday.
Yeah, that Glasgow circuit might not have the elevation of the other stages, but it has its own difficulties to contend with, and anyone who watched the World Championship road races there in 2023 will know that really anything can happen on that city centre circuit. It's going to be a really exciting finish to this race.
I was looking down at the history of the race, and we've had some really exciting finales over the years. The closest ever finish was when Elisa Longo-Borghini took the victory ahead of Grace Brown. 1 second separated the two. That was the smallest winning margin back in 2022. And the largest margin, 1 minute and 18 seconds.
Tell me,
nothing.
Hannah.
Kasia Niewiadoma, she attacked on stage 1, she took the gap, she got the gap,
I remember that.
She won the stage, and she managed to hold on to the overall victory in 2017, but after several days of racing, 1 minute and 18 is nothing.
I know, and this race has been, you know, 6 stages long in the past as well, so yeah, I think
the fact that that's the largest winning margin is unbelievable.
Exactly, over 6 days of racing. So I think the nature of the stages that the organisers devised for this race leads to really exciting, aggressive racing, and that actually means that the time gaps stay quite small.
I guess it makes the race open as well. Everyone believes that they've got a shot at winning, and so they're willing to take that risk to try and go for a stage victory, quite like we saw today. Yeah, it was risk versus reward, but also having a strong tactic in place.
Yeah, exactly, and you know, the tactic some of the tactic will have come from Danny Christmas in the team car, but then the team have to buy into it, and then they actually have to be able to execute it. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that people believing that they can be in contention leads to some really exciting racing, and then the small time gaps. And you know, I hope that today's race, today's stage is a sign of the week to come and what racing we're kind of into view.
Stage 1 of the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women from Dalby Forest to Redcar. Presenting the prize, welcome to the stage from British Cycling, Bob Howden.
Bob Howden comes to the stage. Actually, the riders are going to get one of these tremendous
put your hands together.
Tremendous photographs of the stage itself.
Representing AG Insurance, Soudal, Kim LaCourte.
Our stage winner, Kim LaCourte of AG Insurance, Soudal. Well, a cheers and a toast from Bob Howden and Kim LaCourte. Last class of night timber. That's not a bad recovery shake, is it?
I know. And after the race is done, I think she's got herself a night at a hotel as well as one of her prizes, so she can put her feet up properly and relax in Saltburn.
You're quite right. I mean, not bad, is it? Not bad at all. An incredible victory from Kim LaCourte of AG Insurance Soudal, the rider who ignited the race on Langburn's bank.
Award. Please welcome, presenting the prize from British Cycling.
Received a one-night stay from Redcar. And a guest at the Spa Hotel at Saltburn-by-the-Sea. Great to see that our local clubs are getting involved, Stockton Wheelers, including Cleveland Wheelers as well. Brilliant to see our younger generation being involved in this. Kim LaCourte, the most combative rider of the day. This is a huge moment, isn't it, for a young aspiring racer to be awarding a prize to our stage winner.
Absolutely, and the riders respond so well to it as well and are really encouraging. You know, we've seen before Lotte Kopecky giving her podium flowers and things like that to kind of young aspiring riders in the audience, and you know, I think it can't be underestimated just how important these moments are.
Classification leader. Please put your hands together.
She's going to have another return to the podium.
I was just thinking she's going to be doing more steps to and from the podium. And a lot of these nice artworks for her wall as well.
I am a big fan of the artwork. Very nice. Cleveland Wheelers, another local club in the area, will be awarding this classification, the points classification. In the red jersey, it's Kim LaCourte who leads the red points classification. I hope she's got extra luggage.
I wondered whether you're going to say wall space or luggage, or what, you know, for some jerseys and some
space on the mantelpiece.
Space in general. Yeah, what a year she's having.
Courtesy of that stage victory. She took 25 points. She also took 10 points at the intermediate sprint, 35 points for Kim LaCourte in that red points classification.
Let's present the Queen of the Mountains leader. And please welcome the Mayor of Redcar, Councillor Ian Hart.
The Mayor of Redcar is the next person to present our prize and the artwork.
Queen of the Mountains leader after stage 1 of the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women, Kim LaCourte.
And another jersey to add to the collection for Kim LaCourte. It's a real sweep, isn't it? She took maximum points on Langburn's bank. 6 points on that Category 2 climb. I tell you what, it's not just the prizes that you get here with the trophies and the jerseys and of course leading a classification, but prize money comes with this as well, Hayley.
Yeah, absolutely, and as a race, the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women is, you know, is doing a great job at making sure that, you know, they've got equal prize money for the different races. You know, women in the past have suffered that maybe some of our races have had much lower levels of prize money, but yeah, the prize money, different teams will have different ways of doing it, but they'll be kind of shared a little bit between the team as well, because as we all know, cycling is very much a team sport, not just the individual. It's nice to see Kat Ferguson on the podium, and the hard work of her Movistar teammates in trying to close that gap, kind of being repaid, and her kind of taking the jersey for the best British rider.
Kat Ferguson into the white jersey as the best young rider under 22 years of age. 5th place on the stage. And up against some top sprinters in Lorena Wiebes and Zanatti from that reduced bunch sprint. Kat Ferguson having a sterling performance on day 1. You'll be seeing her in the white jersey tomorrow.
It is, of course, worth saying that obviously Kim LaCourt cannot wear 3 jerseys at once tomorrow, so we'll see her wearing the leader's jersey, and then we'll see other riders kind of, you know, taking care of the Queen of the Mountains and the points jerseys on her behalf.
Well, our leader in the general classification is, of course, none other than Kim LaCourt of AG Insurance Soudal. She'll be wearing the green Lloyds leader's jersey tomorrow.
Let's get one more big Redcar roar for Kim LaCourt.
What a performance it was for Kim LaCourt, and she's enjoying the atmosphere as well, isn't she? Soaking up all of the atmosphere, the vibes here at Redcar. It's a real, I don't know about you, it's almost like a festival feel here.
I know, I love it. I love seeing the riders, you know, celebrating and enjoying themselves, and, you know, taking a sip of the champagne or the beer on the podium or whatever it is. You know, it's just, it makes the riders more approachable as well, I think, and it just, you know, creates a great atmosphere for the teams, for the fans, and for everyone watching.
You work so hard, you put so much effort into training and all of the preparations. You've got to enjoy these big moments when they arise. Kim LaCourt, the leader in the general classification, 5 seconds ahead of Kristen Faulkner. Wiebes at 14 seconds, with Caroline Swinkles at 17. Zanatti, Ferguson, Cousins, Jastrow, Wollaston and Ton all at 18 seconds. You won't be seeing LaCourt in her Mauritian Champions jersey tomorrow, but you'll be seeing her in that green Lloyds leaders jersey. General classification mission is firmly on for AG Insurance Soudal.
I think as well, based on you know, the finish of tomorrow's stage in Saltburn and how she attacked that 1.9 kilometre climb today, you know, I think we've got, I think, a really exciting finish coming up tomorrow.
Taking a little look at tomorrow's stage, Hartlepool to Saltburn by the Sea. I'll finish just a stone's throw away from where we are here in Redcar. 114.3 kilometres of racing. What can we expect on a day like tomorrow?
I think a lot of people are going to be looking to see what the weather's doing, but I think we're going to get more aggressive racing. I think, you know, ultimately the time gaps are still quite tight. There's a lot of opportunity there for different teams, so I think it's going to be aggressive, particularly in the latter half of the stage where it becomes more lumpy.
Well, what a performance, what a day it's been for stage 1 of the Lloyds Tour of Britain Women. Kim LaCourt winning the stage from the breakaway. She was the rider who made the decisive move on Langburn's bank. Kristen Faulkner, the Olympic road race champion, taking second. Lorena Wiebes in third. It's all to play for in the general classification. Make sure you join us tomorrow for stage 2 from Hartlepool to Saltburn by the Sea. From myself, Hannah Walker, and Hayley Simmons joining me alongside. We'll see you tomorrow for stage 2.